very good evening to all our viewers. Today is the 15th of June 2022 and you're watching Primetime News on TV1. For the Newsfirst team, I'm Yuki Poshia. Before we head into stories in detail, let's start off with a look at tonight's headlines.
Scuffles at fuel queues as Sri Lanka loses patience over fuel shortage. Government proposals to address the fuel crisis. Gas shortage continues despite payment for latest shipment.
නියමිත දිනවකවානු හරි කතා කරගෙන තීරණය කරන්නද එහෙම දෙයක්වත් නැහැ හිස් මහමුහුද විතරයි මට පේන්නේ.
New legislation to prevent food hoarding. Politicians arrested over the May 9th attack granted bail.
The fuel crisis in the country reached new heights today. The crisis worsened as sufficient stocks of fuel were not issued and as fuel distributors were required to pay upfront for the purchase of fuel. Now, long queues stretching for several kilometers were seen in many parts of the country, while people in certain areas took to the streets to protest as well.
A person who opposed the sale of fuel to some drivers who were not in line was assaulted in Kaluthara today. The fuel bowser had arrived at the filling station at about 1 in the afternoon. Those in line complained that fuel was sold to some drivers who were not in line as they knew the workers at the filling station. Earlier today, a protest was held by blocking the Gaul Road from Dehivela. Protesters claimed that one filling station had not received fuel for a week, although other stations had received new stocks.
සල්ලි තමයි මේ අපි දුක් විඳින්නේ. මුන් සැප විඳිනවා. මේකේතර අත් දෙනෙක් ඉන්නවා ජීවත් වෙන්න. ජීවත් වෙන්න ක්‍රමයක් නැහැ. ටීවී එකකට එදා එදා තෙල් ගාගෙන ටැංකියට දුවන්නේ. මේ ස්ටොක් කරන් ගෙදරකින් තියාගෙන නෙමෙයි. අපිට එදා එදා ජීවත් වෙන්න දෙන්න කියන්නේ අපිට.
Tensions erupted as some people began to film the protest using their mobile phones.
They have no right to come here in government vehicles and capture footage of our vehicles. What can the intelligence services do by capturing photos of the vehicles of innocent drivers? They must capture these photos and show them to those in power. They must ask them what the meaning of this is.
The protesters blocked one lane of the Gaul Road and staged a protest.
Transportation එකේදී මොනවා හරි වෙලා කියන තමයි කලින් ගිය ඩිමාන්ඩ් එක ඉස්සෙල්ලා ලෙවලින්ද බෑ ඊට පස්සේ මේකට මේකට ආපු වෙනද මිනිස්සු පිට වෙලා ඒක තමයි දැන් කියන්නේ
13 එන්න තිබුණේ නමුත් 13 ආවේ නැහැ මගේ නම තිබුණා ලිස්ට් එකේ මේ වගේ වෙනත් සෙට් වලට යන්න අත යට ගන්න දිනුවක් ඉන්නද අන්න ඒක තමයි දැන් හොයන්න ඕනේ මොකද එහෙම වුණේ කියලා.
The protesters dispersed at around 4 p.m. after police and security officers promised that fuel will be delivered to the filling station. People also staged a protest by blocking the Panchikawatu road today. Our correspondent reported that the roads connecting Arma Street and Pitta and Maligawata and Petta were blocked for many hours. Another protest was held at the entry point to the baseline road from Maligawata. The protesters met officials at the Salon Petroleum Corporation and dispersed after they were promised that fuel will be sold to them. A protest was also held by blocking the Unradhapura Putla main road demanding fuel. The filling station had not received petrol or diesel for 9 days. The police intervened to disperse the protesters after about an hour. People staged a protest by blocking the A9 road near the Gulkulima filling station in Unradhapura. Police and army officers were brought in to bring the situation under control.
A tense situation arose at a fuel station in Slave Island when a police vehicle pumped fuel above the allowed limit. The fuel station opposite the Palliative police station received fuel today after several days. Those in queue were upset that officials insisted police vehicles should be given priority. They finally reached an agreement where fuel was sold to a police vehicle after 3 ordinary vehicles. A protest was held opposite the Ceylon Petroleum Corporation's office in Batiklo demanding fuel. Police dispersed the crowd and arrested 3 protesters.
Now, as the fuel crisis worsens, people continue to wait in queues to buy fuel for their vehicles. Now, many people are using public transport due to the fuel shortage and rising fuel costs.
People faced difficulties in travelling to work and school as they returned from a long holiday. Children had to use public transport with great precaution this morning. Our correspondents reported that public transport services had not been fully operational in many areas this morning. A new school bus service that will run between Maligawata and Petta was launched today. The bus service was launched by Transport Minister Unradhapura. Fuel was sold from a new filling station set up at the Maligawata Multimodal Centre. We launched 21 new school transport buses in the Western Province today. We will also introduce an office train at 6:20 a.m. A new train service to Kandy will be launched as well. People who travel on their motorcycles or vehicles can obtain fuel at this multimodal centre. We have prepared a special plan that will allow buses here to leave for Colombo once in every 10 minutes.
Authorities resolved the delays faced by fuel distributors in collecting payments for fuel stocks at filling stations. A solution was found during a meeting between Energy Minister Kanchana Wijesekara and trade unions.
We have allowed payments to be made using checks for pre-orders after the checkbook is awarded.
Fuel was distributed from the Kulanawa storage terminal today. But a solution had not been found to the issue of not being able to supply enough fuel. The last diesel shipment that would be imported under the Indian credit line will reach Sri Lanka tomorrow. It will be carrying 40,000 metric tons of diesel.
We have given priority to use the fuel stocks to generate electricity, to run public transport and for other essential services. The current stocks can last for 7 days. However, a vessel carrying 40,000 metric tons of fuel is to arrive on the 16th. We have already brought down a petrol and diesel fuel shipment. We have placed orders for fuel to reach the country until the end of this month. We are taking steps to import 2 fuel shipments for next month. Once we sign the new agreement for the Indian credit line, we will will have fuel stocks for 4 months. All this will be given on a 50% requirement basis. The final fuel shipment imported under the Indian credit line will reach Sri Lanka on the 16th. Talks are taking place with India's Exim Bank on the conditions to obtain a loan of $500 million. They are asking what Sri Lanka can place as a guarantee. That is because the Ceylon Petroleum Corporation is bankrupt. They can't keep Bank of Ceylon as a guarantor. Any international bank will not act as a guarantor for Sri Lanka to obtain a loan from India's Exim Bank. They are asking what places of commercial interest we would be able to give them. That is what representatives of Exim Bank and the Bank of Ceylon are discussing currently. On the 6th of January, the former Energy Minister Pitta finished off the agreement Sri Lanka signed with China in 2002 by Ranil Wickremesinghe at the time. On the 7th, he said we will receive $500 million credit line from India. In exchange, we will have to give 887 acres of land from the port and 99 oil tanks. We had to obtain $200 million after that. This was in exchange for a tender awarded to the Adani Group for a wind power plant. I tell the Prime Minister that we need at least 10 shipments to meet the daily demand. We received 9 shipments for $500 million. Even if we distribute those stocks to meet half of the requirement, it can only last for 1.5 months. They are looting the state coffers using officials who provide false data. The government has not been able to take action against corrupt officials involved in the fuel distribution process, even by revealing it through the media. This means that those in power are also linked to these corrupt deals.
Attempts to hand over an energy project to India's Adani Group has stirred controversy. It has come at a decisive time as Sri Lanka has approached India for another loan of $500 million. Now, comments made by the former chairman of the Salon Electricity Board at the Committee on Public Enterprises on the energy project led to the controversy. What would happen next? Charlene Benedict joins us with more.
The former chairman of the Ceylon Electricity Board, MMC Ferdinando, recently made a very serious statement at the COPE hearings. This serious statement gave rise to much controversy both locally and internationally. But what did the former chairman of the CEB say to cause such a controversy? MMC Ferdinando said at the COPE hearing that President Gotabaya Rajapaksa told him that Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi is pressurizing President Gotabaya Rajapaksa to award the tender for the renewable energy project in the north to the Adani Group, and as such he was asked to facilitate it. That was the statement made by MMC Ferdinando that gave rise to all of this controversy. That's where it all started. However, as the news broke, President Gotabaya Rajapaksa issued a statement refuting all allegations that have been leveled against him. Immediately after that, the former chairman of the CEB issued another statement or a letter saying that he was mistaken when he said what he said during the COPE hearings. He said that he was stressed out and he became emotional during the hearing when allegations were leveled against him. He also said that he hadn't eaten and he was stressed out because he was working hard to bring the new Electricity Act to Parliament. However, the former chairman of the CEB failed to clarify one matter, and that is this letter that he sent to the Secretary to the Ministry of Finance on the 25th of November last year. Now, in this letter, the former chairman of the CEB specifically states that following a meeting with the President, he was instructed to facilitate the Adani Group to acquire the 500 megawatt renewable energy project both in Manna and in Punarin. Now, this news item was reported widely not only in Sri Lanka but also in India as well. NDTV did a detailed report on this news item. This news item was also given priority in many other leading Indian news stations like the Hindu and the Indian Express. All of these news stations reported broadly on this revelation that began with a statement made by the former chairman of the CEB at the COPE committee here in Sri Lanka. Responding to a query made by the Hindu newspaper, the Adani Group said that they are saddened by the situation that has taken place in Sri Lanka and that their only intention was to invest in the country. However, this has now blown out into a full controversy mainly because Adani and Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi are close friends, and their relationship, even in India, has given rise to controversies many times before. Do you remember the massive protests that were reported in India recently? These were farmers protesting in India. Now, these farmers were protesting against new agricultural laws that were brought about by the government of Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Now, these agricultural laws were said to favor large corporations in India, including the Adani Group. At a time when Sri Lanka is requesting, pleading even, for a $500 million loan just to import essential fuel for daily activities of all Sri Lankans, an incident of this magnitude is bound to cause some diplomatic issues. However, the Indian government has not yet reacted to this incident or released an official communication to the public. However, the chairman at the time of the CEB is no more. He has stepped down. But will that bring an end to this controversy? Now, the letter sent by the former chairman of the CEB saying that he wishes to retract or withdraw the statement that he made at the CORP hearing regarding this very specific matter was received by the chairman of CORP, Charita Hera. Now, the chairman of CORP tweeting today said that this letter will now be put at the next CORP meeting and they will decide on the future course of action. That is where this saga ends for now. However, this is what the former chairman of CORP, former parliamentarian Sunil Handunhetty from the Janata Vimukti Peramuna, had to say about these incidents that unfolded.
He is the person who facilitated the new fortress agreement to be signed at midnight. He is not someone unaware of the law. He is a loyal servant of this government. He is a good friend of Gotabaya and Basil Rajapaksa. He was imported from America. They brought him out of retirement. According to him, President Gotabaya Rajapaksa had asked him on the 27th of November last year to hand over the project to Adani because of Modi's influence. He was not confused at the CORP committee. He was on a stable state of mind. That night he was threatened. That led to his fatigue. He was asked to retract his statement or resign. This cannot be concealed. Manayaka Arose must announce their stance on this alleged influence exerted by Modi. Other religious leaders too must voice their opinion. This concerns our nation. What is their rationale? Since we have no fuel, gas or food, we require India's assistance, but it will come at a cost. So you must all remain silent till we sell all our lands to India. That is why Ranil was appointed. Ferdinando cannot absolve himself from this simply by resigning. We will summon you to CORP on the 21st. We have notified the chairman, Charita Hera, and he agrees too. This is a serious statement. No one can claim that this was a slip of the tongue. Ferdinando has reversed his statement because of President Gotabaya Rajapaksa's influence. He resigned from his post as a result of that. Both Sri Lanka and India are in turmoil today because of that statement. Many islands have been given off to the Adani company. Do you know that if 1 megawatt of electricity is to be generated, they need more than an acre of land to install the relevant panels? They are now surveying land in Trincomalee for this project. They have made plans to give these lands to them. Just as they are trying to give away farmlands, they are trying to give away other lands as well. What will happen eventually? One day, Adani and Modi will demand us to write off the islands to them. Adani might say if we cannot do that, they would disconnect power supply to our electricity grid. They will flee to the US. Meanwhile, the leader of the Pivithuru Helurume, Uday Gamampila, presented 10 proposals on short-term steps that can be taken to address the fuel shortage in the country. Temporary withdrawal of all cars and SUVs with an engine capacity of over 2000 cc. 3-day office work, Monday, Wednesday and Friday, and online work on Tuesday and Thursday. Introduce a system via WhatsApp or email for the general public to submit the documentation necessary for public service, thus minimizing foot traffic in government offices. Public sector employees should be transferred to the government institution that is closest to their residence. 3-day school week and 2-day online sessions for students. This will attribute to the reduction of the fuel consumption by 40%. All public and private sector meetings need to be carried out via Zoom, saving fuel and time. introduce seatless buses for short distance travel to increase the number of passengers per bus, promote cycling instead of opting to use motorcycles and three-wheelers.
Still in local news, Muditha Piris assumed duties as the new chairman of Electro Gas Lanka Limited today.
එකම නැවක්වත් ෂෙඩියුල් කරලා නැහැ මම හිතන්නේ.
They haven't scheduled the arrival of fuel shipments. It seems like they had acted irresponsibly. I don't like to point fingers and lay blame on anyone, but if they had worked in a more responsible way as the National Gas Distribution Company, they could have spoken to a few suppliers and arranged a few shipments for payments to be made as they arrive. We have a good team of officials at Litrogas. We can overcome this challenge with them.
සතුව ඒ කණ්ඩායමත් එක්ක මේ අභියෝගය ජයග්‍රහණය කරන්න පුළුවන්.
Journalists question whether there are plans to increase gas prices.
ලිට්‍රෝ ගෑස් එක මිල වැඩිවීම.
We have sent a proposal to increase the cost of litro gas cylinders by about 200 or 210 rupees. The final price will be less than 5,000 rupees.
10ක් විතර වගේ මුදලක් තමයි අපි ඉල්ලලා තියෙන්නේ. ඒත් රුපියල් 5000ට වඩා අඩු මුදලක්.
A solution is yet to be found for the gas shortage that has left people on the streets. Many people were in queues to buy cooking gas today as well.
The President had summoned the governors, provincial secretaries and district secretaries to the President's house today.
Issues such as agriculture, food security, introduction of new methods to make public services more efficient, decentralization of all public services at district and regional levels, and management of government expenditure were discussed. The President had stated at the meeting to the district and divisional levels, as well as performing duties from home, is an urgent need. The need for a renewable energy generation campaign in parallel with the agriculture revolution was also discussed at the meeting. Secretaries of the Ministries of Public Administration and Agriculture were also summoned for today's discussion. Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe and Minister of Trade, Commerce and Food Security Nalin Fernando today met with representatives of the commercial banks to discuss the loans requested by rice mill owners. The Prime Minister instructed the Central Bank and the Treasury officials to monitor the bank's lending policies while ensuring that state banks provided loans that were in line with the government's financial policies. The Prime Minister also stated that the government would introduce new legislation that will govern rice mill owners and silo owners to prevent future hoarding of food stocks.
The U.S. International Development Finance Corporation has approved $120 million in new loans for Sri Lanka.
The U.S. International Development Finance Corporation is to provide $100 million to expand micro, small and medium-sized enterprises. $15 million will be used to produce more recycled plastic materials and reduce plastic waste in Sri Lanka. The remaining $5 million will be used to support a food manufacturing company. U.S. Ambassador to Sri Lanka Julie Chang said the loans will be used to expand and strengthen the Sri Lankan economy.
First with the people.
Let's now toss over to a short commercial break. Do stay with News First. We will be right back.
මොකද මහත්තයා මේ?
නෑ මේ ගෙදර සිංක් එකේ
අයි මහත්තයා ස්ලෝන් නෙමෙයිද දැම්මේ?
හදිසියට බාලා පයිප්පයක් දැම්මේ. නැද්ද මුදලාලි ඊයේ පෙරේදා කඩේ රිපෙයාර් කරන්න ගෙනාපු ගම් චුට්ටක්.
මේ වගේ ප්‍රශ්න වලට හොඳම විසඳුම ස්ලෝන් ගම් චුට්ටක්. හැබැයි ඉක්මනින් දාගන්න ස්ලෝන් පයිප්පයක්.
ස්ලෝන් ගම් චුට්ටා හැම ගෙදරකම සිටිය යුතු ජනනල කාර්මිකයා. දැන් ළඟම ග්‍රොසරියෙන් මිලදී ගන්න.
Welcome back to the news. Essential resources including fuel and gas are not the only items currently in short supply in Sri Lanka. Now, the economic crisis has affected the supply of many essential food items as well.
Our cameras captured scenes opposite shops in Hatton today. According to our correspondent, Satos outlets in the area had only issued 8 kilos of rice, 1 kilo of red dal and 1 kilo of sugar per person.
We have been in queue since 7:30 this morning. I went to the kerosene queue at 4 in the morning. Since there was no kerosene, I came here. If possible, please end these queues.
Long lines of consumers were witnessed in Gaul queuing to purchase locally produced milk powder. Crowds gathered at the Samudi Bank in Haliyala to collect their Samudi payments today.
Our Samudi funds have been reduced. We do not know what happened to our savings. I'm better off begging. I am ill, I have a backache. Why did this government end up like this?
Farmers are another segment of society whose livelihoods have been severely threatened owing to the current economic crisis. Corn farmers in Ampara voiced their distress to the Ampara branch of the Sri Lanka Human Rights Commission today.
Farmers lodged a complaint stating that they still have not been compensated for lands that they insured in both 2020 and 2021. The agricultural research assistant of the area is the one who has completed the document. The lands have been insured at the Agriculture Insurance Board through him. Taxes have been paid. When farmers went to obtain compensation for crop damages, the board had rejected it, noting some shortcomings. Subsequently, the crowd engaged in a protest opposite the premises of the Agricultural and Agrarian Insurance Board.
Our crops have been damaged by the drought, by the Sena caterpillar, elephants and other reasons. We have insured our crops to cover these damages. None of us were compensated.
Food is now a luxury for many families in Sri Lanka. Tonight, we filed this report on a family in Gulkulima which is going hungry for more than 24 hours.
In the village of Gulkulima, about 100 kilometers south of capital Colombo, a family is starving. A tiny stove made of bricks, dried leaves and matchsticks symbolize how little they can cook. A little boy holds a bowl of rice and some coconut sambal as he prepares for his first meal in more than 24 hours. But this is what he has to share with his mother, father and two siblings whose last meal was breakfast yesterday. The father once used to earn a living by working at a bakery, but the rising cost of goods resulted in fewer customers, leaving him with less income. The government is warning of a food shortage in the coming months, calling it part of a global crisis. But this family has been dealing with a food shortage for long enough. They are one among many who are struggling in Sri Lanka amidst the economic crisis that keeps getting worse.
Moving on, the World Food Programme in its situation reports on Sri Lanka states that at least 5.7 million people are in need of humanitarian assistance in Sri Lanka. 4.9 million people are food insecure and 1.7 million people will be targeted in the Humanitarian Needs and Priorities Plan June to September 2022.
The World Food Programme and the government conducted a joint rapid food security assessment in April. It surveyed the poorest households in 17 districts and found that 86% are using coping mechanisms such as purchasing cheaper, 95% are using less nutritious food, 83% were limiting portion sizes, and 66% have reduced the number of meals eaten daily.
Still in local news, the 21st Amendment to the Constitution is being widely discussed among political circles. Now, the March 12 movement met the opposition leader today to submit 11 proposals to the amendment.
Members of the March 12 movement met with opposition leader Sajit Premadasa with civil activists today. What is happening in the country is not reforms but political games. The appointment of the Prime Minister is similar to gambling. It is a game. Why aren't they speaking about the 21st Amendment? Who is the head of the cabinet? Based on whose wishes are cabinet papers tabled? They usually discuss completing a certain portion of the task. Now they aren't doing even that. This government is one that protects the president. He has appointed a few commandos. We have transformed this office into a reforms secretariat. If this process of implementing reforms is to be successful, all stakeholders must unite to do that.
සියලුම පාර්ශ්වකරුවන් යම් ක්‍රමවේදයකට ඒකාබද්ධ වෙන්න ඕන. මම හිතනවා මේ මාර්තු 12 ව්‍යාපාරය අපි විපක්ෂ නායක.
The March 12 movement made 11 proposals to the opposition leader and urged him to pressurize the government to pass the 21st Amendment and create the political reforms that the people expect.
මේ 21 වෙනි සංශෝධනය ඉක්මනින් සම්මත කරලා රටේ ජනතාව ඉල්ලන දේශපාලන ප්‍රතිසංස්කරණ සමාජගත කරන්න. කරුණු 11ක් සහිත යෝජනා.
We handed over a document outlining 11 proposals to the opposition leader. He responded positively together with the parliamentarians in his party. We believe the 21st Amendment will become a reality in this parliament.
Several independent parliamentarians held a media briefing earlier today. We expected the cabinet to approve the 21st Amendment last Monday. Delaying it is not healthy. If they are hoping to approach the International Monetary Fund, they will have to build the country's image to democratic reforms. They must at least take steps to pass the 21st Amendment during next week's parliamentary sittings after considering what the court has to say. If they find loopholes to delay it, it will push the country further into chaos. They must not point the finger at anyone after that.
Although representatives from many parties are not here, there are more who attended discussions with us. They want to transform into a group that goes beyond simply engaging in politics and instead respond to the people. Instead of delaying this, they must take swift measures and introduce democratic reforms in the country. That is what we are requesting.
Similar to the sun rising, they bring it to the cabinet every Monday, but it does not get passed. We demand the government to pass this in cabinet next week and then table the amendment by including our proposals at the next parliamentary session on the 21st.
ඒ පාර්ලිමේන්තුවට කරුණාකරලා ඉදිරිපත් කරන්න.
අලුත් සම්දානයක ආරම්භයක්
නෑ.
This is not a new alliance. That is why we decided to work together while working independently, maintaining our identity within the parties.
මේ 21 වෙනි සංශෝධනය සම්බන්ධයෙන් අපි එක මතයක ඉන්නවා.
The 9 political parties that decided to be independent from the government met at the Communist Party office in Burella to discuss the formation of a new political alliance. We have not decided on the name. We have decided to bring all factions together to steer the government in the right direction. This will be a people's force. We discussed the formation of a new political alliance with all our parties. We are to reach an agreement on it soon.
SLPP MP Sanat Nishanta, Moratua Mayor Saman Lal Fernando and another suspect who were arrested and remanded for attacking Gota Gogama on the 9th of May this year were ordered to be released on bail.
The order was made by Fort Magistrate Tilena Gamage and they were released on 2 personal bails of 10 million rupees each. Dan Priyasad, who was also arrested and remanded, was returned to remand custody until the 22nd of June. The Secretary to the Ministry of Public Security was ordered by court to explain why the Attorney General's directive to transfer senior DIG Deshabandhu Tendukun and institute disciplinary action against him was not implemented. MPs Johnston Fernando, Nilan Jayatilaka and other suspects who are already out on bail were present in court.
කියන්නේ ඔයගොල්ලෝ එඩිට් කරලා නිදාන්නේ. ඇයි ඔයගොල්ලෝ එඩිට් කරලා නිදාන්නේ. ඒකනේ කතා කරන්න බය ඔයගොල්ලන්ට. මාධ්‍යවේදීන් තමයි රට ගිනි තියන්නේ. එඩිට් කරලා ඔක්කොම දාලා හින්දා අපි අල්ල ගන්න එපා මේවට.
The responses to the magistrate's questions were contradictory to the previous hearing. Deshabandhu Tendukun had written a letter to the CID regarding his statements and another DIG and another SSP. This is intimidation towards the CID detectives. It is clear that the CID investigation is protecting Deshabandhu Tendukun.
Deshabandhu Tendukun ආරක්ෂා කරන විමර්ශනයක් තමයි CID එකෙන් කරන්නේ.
The government of China has donated $800,000 worth of medical equipment together with the United Nations Population Fund. According to a tweet by the Chinese embassy in Sri Lanka, 328,660 packs of medical equipment have been donated.
The Chinese embassy tweeted that the donation was made to grassroots public health workers across Sri Lanka who have been safeguarding the nation during public health emergencies such as COVID-19. An event was held to hand over the equipment under the patronage of Health Minister Keheliya Rambukwalla.
More urgent needed assistance, including medical products, will be delivered according to schedule. In this regard, I want to take this opportunity to encourage all partners and friends of Sri Lanka to step up, and jointly we could help this beautiful nation get back on track as soon as possible and avoid a possible humanitarian crisis. And I sincerely believe that, as proven time and time again in history, the resilient Sri Lanka people will once again overcome the current difficulties and challenges. In that process, the Chinese people will, as always, stand firmly your side.
Protests dubbed Kitchen Lament were held at multiple locations today.
A protest dubbed Kitchen Lament was held in Kohuala today. The protesters carried kitchen utensils as they opposed the rising cost of living. A similar protest was held at the Gotagogama protest site opposite the President's office in Colombo. They demanded President Gotabaya Rajapaksa to resign by taking accountability over the crisis.
The 125th Jubilee celebration of St. Joseph's College, Colombo was held in a grand manner this morning. It was presided over by His Eminence Malcolm Cardinal Ranjith, the Archbishop of Colombo.
St. Joseph's College, Colombo is one of the leading Catholic schools in the country. It was founded in 1896 by Archbishop Christopher E. Bonjin. St. Joseph's College, with a staff of over 400 and a student body of over 3,500, is a renowned school which has produced outstanding students in a number of fields to the country.
If you can, don't leave this country and go and settle down in another place. But all the same, this is our country. This is our beloved motherland. All those who have gone abroad are yearning to come back and expressing that concern in demonstrations all over the place. We have to develop this country somehow. This is our homeland. This is where we were born, and we have to do our duty by our motherland. After 40-50 years, this country has become divided. We have a huge airport where not a single plane is landing. We have a huge tower which is absolutely useless and a wastage of money. We have to say this. This is what was called the wonder of Asia. And this is what was called the Saubhagya. This is painful to say this, but it is true. Let us transform this country to a better place. Education is to empower these youngsters to one day take up roles of responsibility. But please remember, your country, this country belongs to you, and you have to make this country become a better place for yourselves and for all those who will follow you.
The Centre for Policy Alternatives has filed a fundamental rights application challenging the appointment of Dhammika Perera to Parliament.
CPS said that Dhammika Perera's name was not on the list submitted by the Sri Lanka Podujana Perumuna to the Election Commission under Article 99A of the Constitution or in any nomination papers submitted in respect of any electoral district by the SLPP for the general election held in 2020. CPA submits that Perera's appointment is illegal, arbitrary, irrational, grossly unreasonable, contrary to the law, and will, if unchecked, cause grave and irremediable harm and prejudice to the people of Sri Lanka and the rule of law itself.
And with that, it's a wrap of Primetime News here on TV1. Take care and good night.